Yo, what's up YouTube? I'm Max, and this is my affirmation video from the book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, and I wrote it here in my affirmation journal. I basically copied the book and I'm just repeating it back to myself here in my affirmation video. You can see it's all the same thing on all my other videos if you've just been following along and listening. I'm just going to go ahead and repeat this back to myself and to you for you to gather information that I do provide to you. It's very simple and very straightforward. Like I said, it's just my affirmation video. Excuse my hair, as you know, it's kind of tough out there to get your hair cut these days. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and continue with my affirmations because that's what it's about. Effect of thought on circumstances. The human mind may be likened to a garden which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must pass, and must and will bring forth, if no useful seeds are put into the abundance, and if are useless, weedless seeds, then will fall and accumulate and reproduce their own kind. Just as the gardener cultivates the plot, keeping it free from the weeds, cultivating the flowers and the fruits which are required, so may we tend the garden of our mind, weeding out all of the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts, and cultivating towards perfection the flowers and the fruits of rightful, useful, and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, we sooner or later discover that we are the master gardener of our souls and the director of our lives. This lesson also reveals within ourselves as the laws of thought that enable it to understand, which is incredibly in an increasing accuracy, how the thought forces of which are of the elements in the operate of the shell. I say a lot of words. Shaping of our character, circumstances, and destiny. Thought and character are that which are the character in which will manifest and discover itself only through the environment and circumstances of the outer conditions of our lives, and will always be found to be harmoniously related to our inner state. This does not mean that our circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within ourselves that for the time being, that they are indispensable to our development. Each of us is where we are by the law of our being. The only thought which we have built into our character here brought us there. In the arrangement of our life, there is no element of chance, but all is the law which cannot err. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony with their surroundings as of those who are contented with them. As progressive and evolving beings, we are there. This is my affirmation video, so I can just repeat it as much as I want. Evolving beings, we are just there in which we learn and we may grow. And as we learn to appreciate the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for which is us, as any circumstance contains which for us is passes away and gives place to another circumstance. We are buffeted by circumstances so long as we believe in ourselves to be a creature of outside conditions, but we realize that we are a creative power and that we really command the hidden soil and the seeds of our being at which circumstances arise, and then we become the rightful masters of ourselves. The circumstances grow out of each of us, and we have the length of the practice, self-control, and self-purification that knows for which we will have noticed the alteration in our circumstances as has been in exact ratio with our mental condition. So true is this when we apply ourselves to remedies of defects of our own character and make swift and marked progress and pass rapidly through succession of vicissitudes. The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches of that which is its cherished aspirations, and it falls to the level of basest desires. And circumstances are a means by which the soul receives its own. Every thought seed are soon allowed to fall into the mind and take roots there, produces its own, blossoming sooner or later into action, declaring its own harvest of opportunity and circumstances. Good thoughts bear good fruits, and bad thoughts bear bad fruits. Bad fruits? Tell me about it. The outer world of circumstances shapes itself into the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors of which make us for the ultimate good of the individual. As the reaper of our own harvest, we learn both by suffering and by bliss, following the inmost desires, aspirations, thoughts by which we allow ourselves to be dominated, pursuing the impure imaginings of steadfastly walking the highway of strong high endeavor. We at last arrive at the fruition and the fulfillment and the conditions of our lives. Laws of growth and adjustment are naturally followed. One does not come to it as drunkenness or as crime by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and by desires, nor does it permit the person to fall suddenly into crime by stress of any mere external force. The criminal thought that had long been secretly fostered in the heart in that hour of opportunity revealed its gathered power. No such conditions can exist in descending into vice and its attendant sufferings apart from the vicious inclinations or the ascending into the virtue of pure happiness. Without the continued have to say it again. Let me repeat it. Run it back. Cultivation of virtuous aspirations. Therefore, as the Lord and the Master of thoughts, we are the makers of ourselves, the sharpers, the shapers, and we are the author of our own environment. Even at birth, the soul comes into its own. Thank you for a pen and books. Comes into its own, and through every steps of its earthly pilgrimage, it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are reflections of its own purity and impurity, its strength and weaknesses. We do not attract that which we want, but we attract that which we are. Our whims and their fancies and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but our inmost thoughts and desires are fed with our own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves. It is our very self. We are by ourselves, and with thought and action are the jailers of fate. They imprison, being base. They also are the angels of freedom. They liberate, being noble. Not what we wish and pray for do we get, but what we justly earn. Our wishes and prayers are gratified and answered only when they harmonize with our thoughts and actions in the light of truth. What then is the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that we are continually revolting against an effect without, while all the time we are nourishing and preserving its cause in the heart. That cause may take the form of conscious vice or unconscious weakness, but whatever it is, it stumbling impedes the efforts of its own possessor, and hence calls aloud for a remedy. All of us are anxious to improve our circumstances, but are unwilling to improve ourselves. We therefore remain bound. People who do not shrink from self-purification, self-crucifixion, however you want to say it, I can say it however I want, can never fail to accomplish the object upon which their hearts are set. This is true of earthly as in heavenly things. Even those whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before they can accomplish this object, and how much more so for those people who could realize a strong and well-poised life. For example, let's look at a man who is wretchedly poor. He is extremely anxious that his surroundings and home comfort should be improved, yet all of the time he shrinks his work and believes himself justified to deceive his employer on the ground of insufficiency of his wages. Such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of principles which are the basis of the time of true prosperity, and is totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness. But it is actually attracting to himself still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in and acting out in a deceptive and negative thoughts. Now let's look at a rich woman who is the victim of painful persistence to disease. As a result of gluttony, she is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it, but it will not sacrifice her glutinous desires. She wants to gratify her taste for rich and unnatural foods and have her health as well. Such a woman is totally unfit to have health because she was not yet learned first principles of a healthy life. Another example is an employer of labor who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation wage in the hope of making larger profits and cuts the wages of his employers. Such a man is altogether unfitted for prosperity. And when he finds himself bankrupt, both as regards to reputation and riches, he blames circumstances, not knowing that he is the sole author of his condition. I have introduced the 3 cases here to illustrate of the truth that which each person is a caller through nearly always unconsciously of her circumstances, that is, while perhaps aiming at a good end, that a person is continually frustrating its accomplishments by encouraging thoughts or desires which cannot possibly harmonize with that end. Such cases could be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely, but this is not necessary as you trace the action of the laws of thought in your own mind and life until this is done. More external facts cannot serve as a ground of reasoning. Circumstances, however, are so complicated that so deeply rooted in the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a person's entire soul condition cannot be judged by another from the external aspects of his own alone. A person may be honest in certain direction, yet suffer from these honestly. I don't understand the directions in which they're going, yet acquire wealth. The usual conclusions, however, is that the one person who fails because of his or her particular honesty and that other person prospers is because of that person's particular dishonesty. This is the result of a superficial judgment, which assumes that the dishonest person is almost totally corrupt and the honest person is almost entirely virtuous. In the light of a deeper knowledge and wider experience, such as judgment is found here. The dishonest person may have some admirable virtues which the other does not possess, and the honest person obnoxious vices which is absent in the other. The honest person reaps the good results in the honest thoughts and acts, but also as the cause of suffering which is from his vice produces. The dishonest person likewise garnishes suffering and happiness. It is pleasing to humanity to understand and believe that people suffer because of their virtues, but not until ever sickly, bitter, and impure thought has been taken from their minds and every sinful stain washed from their souls can they be in a position to know and declare that the sufferings that they are a result of the good and not of their bad qualities. On the way to yet on a long before supreme perfection has been reached, and with such people have experienced the great law, which is absolutely just, and which cannot therefore give good for evil or evil for good. Possessed of such knowledge will be known, looking back upon their past ignorance and blindness, that each of their lives is always and was justly ordered, and that all of their past experiences, good and bad, were the exact outworkings of this evolving yet uninvolved self. Good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. This is but a saying that nothing can come from corn but corn, and nothing but nettles and nettles. We understand that this is the natural world and it works with it. With if you understand the mental and moral world, that this is an operation is just as simply an understanding and undeviating, and that therefore do not cooperate with it. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. It is an indication that we are out of harmony with ourselves and the law of life. The soul and the supreme of suffering is to purify, to burn out all of those useless and impure. Suffering ceases for those who are pure. There could be no object in burning gold after the dross has been removed, and a perfectly pure and enlightened person can never suffer. The circumstances we account with suffering are the result of our own lack of mental harmony. Right here. The circumstances we encounter with blessedness are the result of our own mental harmony. Blessedness does not have material possession, it is the measure of right thought. Wretchedness is not a mental possession, it is the measure of a wrong thought. We may be cursed and rich, we may be blessed and poor. Blessedness and riches are joined together only when the riches are rightly and understandably and wisely used. And the poor person descends into righteousness only when his or her lot is regarded to as a burden or unjustly opposed. Indigence and indulgence are the two extremes of wretchedness. They are both equally unnatural and the result of mental disorder. We are not rightly conditioned until we are happy, healthy, and prosperous. Happiness, health, and prosperity are the result of harmonious adjustment of the inner and the outer of the relationship with our surroundings. We begin to mature as adults only when we cease to whine and revile and commence to search for the hidden justice which regulates our lives. As we adapt our mind to the regulating factor, we cease to name others as the cause for the condition that we begin ourselves to put up in a strong and noble thoughts. We cease to kick against circumstances, but begin to use them as aids to more rapid progress and as a means of discovering the hidden powers and possibilities within ourselves. Law, not confusion, is the dominating principle in the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the sole and substantial part of life, and of righteousness, not corruption, is the molding and moving force in the spiritual government of the world. This being so, we must understand and use ourselves to find that the universe is right, and that during the process of putting ourselves right, we will find that as Our thoughts are altered towards things and other people. Things and other people will alter their thoughts towards us. The proof of this truth is in every person, and thereby forces and admits an easy investigation by systematic introspection of self-analysis. Let us radically alter our thoughts, and we will be astonished at the rapid transformation it will affect in the material conditions of our lives. We may imagine that a thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit rapidly crystallizes and solidifies into circumstances. Bestial thoughts, beast thoughts, crystallize into habits of intoxication and consumption, which solidify into circumstances of destitution and disease. All that. Impure thoughts of every kind of crystallize into not rejuvenating at all, confusing habits, which solidify into distracting and adverse circumstances of failure, inviting slavish dependence. Lazy thoughts crystallizing into the habits of dishonesty and solidify into circumstances of foulness and beggary. Hateful thoughts crystallize into habits of accusations and violence, which solidify into circumstances more or less distressing. On the other hand, beautiful thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of grace, kindliness, which solidify into genial and sunny circumstances. Pure thoughts crystallize into habits of temperance and self-control, which solidify into circumstances of repose and peace. Thoughts of courage, self-reliance, and decision crystallize into strong habits, which solidify into circumstances of success, plenty, and freedom. Energetic thoughts crystallize into habits of cleanliness and industry, which solidify into circumstances of pleasantness. Gentle and forgiving thoughts crystallize into habits of gentleness, which solidify into protective and preservative circumstances. Loving and lending and unselfish thoughts crystallize into habits of self-forgetfulness for others, which solidify into circumstances of sure and abiding prosperity and true riches. I had a particular train of thought persisted in, whether it be good or bad, cannot fail to produce the results on the character in which these circumstances. We cannot directly choose our circumstances, but we can choose our thoughts, and so indirectly yet surely shape our circumstances of nature to help us understand the gratifications of encouraging thoughts and the opportunities presented which will be speedily bring into the surface, with which could be both good and evil thoughts. Let us cease from the sinful thoughts, and all the world will soften towards us and be ready to help us. Put away weak and sickly thoughts, and opportunities will spring up on every hand to aid our strong resolves. Encourage good thoughts, and no hard fate will bring us down to wretchedness and shame. The world is all but a kaleidoscope and of varying combinations of colors, which at every succeeding moment it presents to us an exquisitely adjusted picture of our ever-moving thoughts. You will be what you will be. Let failure find its false content in that poor world environment, but spirit scorns it and it's free. Its master's time encourages and conquers space. It cows that boastful trickster chance, and bids the tyrant circumstance uncrown and fill the servant's place. The human will, that force unseen, the offspring of a deathless soul, can hew away to any goal. The walls of granite light intervene, be not important in the delay, but wait as one who understands. When spirit arises and commands, the gods are ready to obey. Well, that was that was As a Man Thinketh through James Hill. That was my affirmation video. I wrote it here, so I think twice. I'm Max, and I hope you were listening and you gathered a lot of information, and you could do the same thing. I appreciate you. I hope you're listening, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.